Okay, awesome. I'm just going to start the introduction so we can get going on our tug. And if you're just joining, welcome to everybody. We'll just start. We have a few slides to start, and then we'll get into the presenters. So welcome everybody to the Toronto Tableau user group. This is our first user group this year. Congratulations to everybody for making it through the dark holiday season all by yourself, huddled in your houses. But congratulations, and hopefully you all made it through happy and healthy and safely. So this is our first one of the year. There will be, we do have a schedule of a few coming up, and we'll give you details of the March one at the end. So we have lots of big plans this year. Just for your information, this is your Tableau user group Toronto team. And this is our agenda for this evening. So Tamara will be presenting first on some of her awesome dashboards that she does with the City of Toronto with public health. And then Caroline has an awesome creative process to show you how to create a Tableau resume. So that's what our schedule is for this evening. And we'll have questions after each presentation, of course, so you can ask your questions. So further to that, though, I'll ask you just a reminder, if people can put their questions in the Q&A, it's easier for us to moderate that one. So just to make sure that your questions get seen and we can, forward it to, we can state it out loud for the presenters so that we make sure that you get your questions answered. Awesome. So an update to the Toronto team. You'll see on our previous slide that we're welcoming Roland to our Toronto Tug leadership team. So I'll pass it over to Roland. He's going to give a quick introduction of himself.
Okay, I'm going to try to give an intro to myself. I've been having internet problems just recently. That picture is me with a hammer, probably because I probably had problems with Rogers and their internet. So I currently work at Shaw Communications, Director of Corporate Reporting. Primarily, I'm responsible for providing industry-specific metrics or reporting that supports the entire organization. Our team is known as a source of truth. Our reports are geared for two primary audiences, leadership, and those people, we normally send them an email on a scheduler, Tableau server, and deliver all our dashboards through emails. The other group is the operational business leaders and their direct reports. We also send them emails. However, the contents are made more for next level analytics, and that's done by interacting with the dashboards. So we create filters for those people. Our mission is to modernize analytics throughout the organization and help our partners make data-driven decisioning. And I think that's about all for me. I mean, you can read whatever is on there at a later time, I suppose.
Well, thanks, Roland. Super happy welcome to the Toronto Tug team. We're happy to have you aboard. If you want to give a shout out to Roland, he's helping us out with our social media, so you can tweet to him. We have a Toronto Tug Twitter account, and you can tag us in any tweets you have using hashtag Toronto Tug, or I think it's at Toronto Tug, right, Roland?
Toronto Tug.
Yep. So that's where you can find him if you have any. Yeah, great. Thanks, Roland. And sad news, Vinitha will be moving on. She has been with us since last January. So unfortunately, she is going to be leaving our leadership team. But big congratulations, because she has got a new job at Tableau. So sorry to see you go, Vinitha.
Hey, Candy, thank you. What I'd have to say was been a great experience to get to know you, Candy, Catherine, Ojo, and Roland. I know you and I worked at CNBC before, but welcome to the team. I think being part of the Toronto Tug really just opened up a lot of opportunities for me in terms of meeting more people, networking, really got to see some amazing presentations. And so I'm really thankful for having the opportunity to be part of this team. and planning. And, I encourage anyone else that's interested in participating. If you want to present to speak, it's a great team to connect with. So please do that. And personally for me, they say change is good. And so, I do have to step down from the tug because I am joining Tableau. I'm not going too far. I will still be participating in all the tug events because they're pretty exciting, and it's great to see the Toronto community coming together. And yeah, just thank you, everyone, and let's continue building out this great community and put Toronto on the Tableau map. Thanks, Candy.
Well, thanks so much for all your work, Vineetha. It was great working with you on the tug, and we'll look forward to seeing you around Tableau events in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So Ojo, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, Vineetha. Congratulations, Vineetha. Candy, I am on. Yes.
Okay, awesome. So do you have are you doing the polling tonight?
Yes.
Did you want to present your screen?
So I let this flow, and towards the end, I have a few questions, and I'll open the channel up.
Okay, so I'll stop and then you can.
Hey, Candy, was I audible?
Nope.
I have the questions, but we'll get it towards the end.
Oh, so you're not going to do it now?
No, not right now.
Oh, okay. Sure. Okay. Okay. Okay, so then without further ado, we'll pass it over to Tamara. So we're super looking forward to Tamara's presentation tonight. I've seen her present before at one of the public sector tugs, and she's awesome. And her dashboards are really super interesting, and she's working on a lot of interesting things. So super excited to hear her present. She can give you more information. She's working with the City of Toronto, but now I understand, Tamara, you've been co-opted by the Public Health Department. So that's exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
Throw it over to you.
Okay, awesome. Let me figure out. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And oh, sorry, let me just get it ready. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and can you tell me if you can see this presentation?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. Okay, so I just wanted to start. Yeah, I've been working for the past 5 years at the City of Toronto, and before the pandemic, I worked for Children's Services, leading a project which I am going to mostly be presenting on today. But I've been redeployed since March, since the pandemic, with Toronto Public Health to help them with their COVID response. And just this week, I'm now in a 1-year permanent position with Toronto Public Health. So I've taken a leave from my base position. So that's kind of a little bit about me. And I'm just going to dive right into showing you these projects. And actually, so it's 6:13. Okay, cool. So I wanted to show you guys a project that I've been working on for the past 4 years called Raising the Village, as a bit of a case study for some dashboards and data visualization. Raising the Village is a child well-being project, and the main purpose of the project is really to measure how children and families in Toronto are doing. And what's really cool about Raising the Village is that we use a bunch of different data sources that are all population level to be able to understand this question of how children and families are doing. And we're able to access all of that data because Raising the Village is a project that's really spearheaded by a collective impact group called the Toronto Child and Family Network. And this group is made up of organizations across the city of Toronto that have a stake in the well-being of children and families. So these include city divisions like Parks and Recreation and Public Health and Children's Services, but it also includes other organizations like United Way, Big Brothers Big Sisters, the Toronto Public Library, the school boards, like really just any organization you can think of that really works with children at a systems level is on this network. And so because of that, we're able to really partner and create these data sharing agreements with them to be able to use these population level data sources, which I'm going to get into. But the cool thing about Raising the Village is when we first launched, it was really, we used no interactive data visualization. It was all static. And then we recently relaunched with a fully interactive website where every sort of piece of data visualization is done, or almost every piece is done in Tableau and allows users to really ask very specific questions. So that's what I'm going to show today. I have just a couple other slides to kind of highlight this. So yeah, this is what I'm going to talk about, is this sort of data visualization journey, I call it, and to just show you what Raising the Village used to look like, I would make all of the data visualization using tools like ArcGIS for mapping. Because we're the city, we have a lot of questions about, like, a lot of where questions. So where are children experiencing inequities, or where are services accessed? So mapping is a really important tool for us. And then all of our charts were done in like really basic software like Excel. And one of the issues is really that even though we work at the city and we talk about it at the city level, most of the actual planning and decision making happens at a much more granular community-based level. So as soon as we launched with our static charts and images, the first question was like, hey, how do I drill down and know this information at my local community level? Or I'm really only interested in this data for low-income families, and so on. So these were like the questions we were being asked over and over as soon as our project launched. And it was very clear that we needed some sort of tool to allow users to drill down and ask those questions. So that's where I started to move in terms of data visualization into this fully kind of dashboard focused interactive Tableau world. So I'm gonna exit this little presentation and just bring you right to the website. So you can still see this, right? I'm now on raisingthevillage.ca. This is where this project kind of lives. And I'm going to start with showing you the indicators. So the Raising the Village is really the backbone of it, are these 5 child, 5 family, and 5 Indigenous outcomes. And these are meant to be, oh, Vinitha, do you think you could mute? I think there's some feedback coming from your mic. Okay, I don't know. Sorry, so these 5 child, 5 family, and 5 Indigenous outcomes, they're these sort of umbrella outcomes that are 120 indicators fit under. So I'm going to show you an example of what an indicator might look like. So if I go to the resilience and support outcome, and then choose one of my favorite indicators, which is students feeling hopeful about the future, you'll get brought to this kind of little dashboard that brings you through what this indicator is. So this indicator is asked to all TDSB students from grades 4 to 8, and they're asked how often they feel hopeful about the future over the last school year. And you can see the very first sort of tab is pretty basic. It's just a chart, but it lets you know what the overall responses are. So 74% of students felt hopeful all the time or often, which is great. But where the interactivity really comes down is when you go to the next tab, and we're able to disaggregate data by all of the different demographic questions that are asked on the various data sources. So every data source has a different amount of demographic questions. The TDSB student census, I think, is the richest, and it really asks about a lot of different demographics. So it's really valuable for being able to understand inequities. You can see that now that I'm on this this demographic, we can see that there's differences in terms of students' ethno-racial background and how often they feel hopeful about the future. So it really ranges from 78% of students feeling hopeful to 62%. But where we see a bigger inequity is when we go to something like students' gender. And for the TDSB census, they actually did ask children if they identified as a non-binary gender. So for the first time, we're able to see these kinds of inequities. And you can see that there's a really stark difference between female and male students and then non-binary students in terms of how often they feel hopeful. You can also, like, if you wanted to focus on the negative rather than the positive, you can switch to select that and then be able to really highlight these inequities a bit more. You see a very similar pattern also happening with students' sexual orientation. So we're just seeing that non-binary students and LGBTQ and questioning students are feeling a lot less hopeful about the future than their peers. So that is not a good thing. And then lastly, all of our indicators have a map. So this is a really important tool for use in Toronto. Toronto, as probably everybody knows, is a massive city. And so a lot of work and planning really happens at these neighborhood levels. So this tool lets you kind of focus in on the neighborhood that you might work in and really understand what's happening there. So that's one indicator. And I'm going to show you just one more, which is, I think, relevant to actually COVID and the world that we live in right now. So a cool indicator we have is this one, whoops, not this one, is, where is it? Sorry, I guess I should have gotten this. Okay, right, is difficulty finishing homework at home. What's cool about this indicator is they ask students, is there something that gets in the way of you being able to finish your homework at home? And the different possible things that could get in the way were that you didn't have computer access, you didn't have internet access, you didn't have space, or you didn't have study materials. And you can see that overall, like, this is a good news story. There's very few students who all the time or often are not able to do their homework because of these issues. So less than 5%. But being able to drill down and look at this in terms of demographics and then in terms of where children live is really important for understanding how we can target resources. So as soon as we go to the next tab, you can see that we're landed on not having a computer at home. And then we're looking at this by students' race. And you can see that there's a really, really big inequity in terms of Indigenous students having a computer at home or not. And even with Black students, this is a huge difference between white students, where 4% are reporting not having access to a computer at home, compared to 10% of Black students. So this is really important for school boards right now for figuring out how they're going to be able to support students who might not have computer and internet access at home for doing things like online schooling. And this is something that we wouldn't necessarily be able to understand in a robust way without having this data disaggregated. Again, you can kind of switch around and look at various demographics, whatever you might be interested in, to explore this more. And then lastly, the map, just to highlight how it can help to understand where students are having difficulty accessing. So these are the indicators. There's 120 of them. So Tableau, I mean, there's a lot. There's like, I can't even begin to think about how many iterations of a question you can ask, but 120 indicators, you can get a sense of all the different ways you can slice and dice each. And they're all now on interactive Tableau dashboards. So that's a really exciting thing for us. And I did, in order to make this doable for me, because I'm the only one that does these dashboards for Raising the Village, is I really spent a lot of time up front thinking about the way that the data was going to be structured so that I can pull this stuff into different dashboards and be able to not have to necessarily start from scratch for every single dashboard. So for each data source, so for example, this was the TDSB census, I would spend a lot of time structuring that data source so that I can actually bring the whole thing into Tableau and be able to use filters and whatnot to be able to at least start from a bit of a template for each dashboard. So that was how I made it somewhat manageable for me. But now I'm going to move on to show you some of the other tools, because the indicators are really the main piece of Raising the Village, but I wanted to show where the sort of Tableau piece of this began. So this is probably our most used function on the website. It's called the Neighborhood Comparison Dashboard. This was the very first thing I ever built on Tableau. And I actually used it as a prototype to make the business case for my division to buy Tableau for me, because anyone who works in the public sector knows that it's not always easy. And when I was first doing this stuff, which was now 5 years ago, there was very little or pretty much no usage of Tableau at the City of Toronto. So yeah, I created this dashboard, used it as a business case to kind of get buy-in, and I'll just really show you quickly what it does. But it allows somebody to hover and click on a neighborhood that they might work or live in. And when you hover, you're able to see important things for community organizations and government, like the top 3 most spoken languages. And then when you click, you're just seeing a whole bunch of different data about that specific neighborhood. So the first thing that you'll see are various StatsCan census information. So this lets you know sort of who lives in this neighborhood. So things about low income, visible minorities, percentage of immigrants and refugees that live in this neighborhood. And you're able to then see how this neighborhood kind of fares compared to the mean, and then also compared to other neighborhoods. So you can tell right away if your neighborhood maybe has like a higher percentage of families that are living in low income compared to the rest of the city. And then as you scroll down, you see the same kind of thing across all of our indicators. So if you wanted to just focus on maybe, you know, indicators where this neighborhood is doing very well, you can try and look for the dark blue circles. So that would indicate that they're doing better than average. And then the dark red would indicate that they're doing worse than average. And how I know that this is being used is community organizations or city divisions will go to the neighborhood that they need to do work in, and then they'll just download this, print it off as a PDF and put it up on their wall. As we grow, this thing becomes a little bit overwhelming. So there are ways that you can like filter by specific outcomes. So if you're only interested in, for example, mental health, you can really focus in on just the mental health indicators. So you get a much smaller subset. And then we also have the ability to filter by the different data sources. So that is that dashboard. And then I want to show one other dashboard because I think it's important for showing how we can provide a bit more context to data. So we work, again, in government, like it's really, really important that we have, you know, a narrative to the data that we're presenting, especially when we're talking about vulnerable populations or groups that are having difficulty accessing services. So I work really closely with a number of divisions at the city who do a lot of equity work with communities to develop this dashboard, which provides a bit of context to why we might be seeing some of these inequities based on the different demographics. So this is kind of taking all of those indicators and looking at just sort of inequities based on demographics across all the indicators. So it's pretty basic. You choose a demographic that you want to look at, and then the group that's doing the worst would be shown in orange, and the group that's doing the best would be shown in blue. And then you also have a column that shows how much greater the disparity is between the group doing the best and the group doing the worst. So there's a lot of organizations that work very specifically with a certain ethno-racial group. So this might be a really helpful tool for them to just look down a single column and be able to see if there's anything that's jumping out as, you know, an area that really needs to be focused on. And then this is where you get some context to like why we might be seeing these inequities, and, you know, that there's a long history of racism and whatnot in Toronto and Canada as a whole. And you can click on whatever sort of ethno or whatever demographic you want to look at, and you're going to get a very similar description. So this one is looking at gender again, and it's pretty upsetting, but you could see that on almost every single indicator, our non-binary children are doing worse, and often by a lot. So that's a pretty concerning thing. Same if you look at sexual orientation, LGBTQ and questioning students are doing pretty bad compared to straight students. So this is a helpful tool, especially for people, all of this is very helpful for community organizations who are looking to get grants. It's really helpful for kind of creating the case and building the story for why, you know, your organization might need increased funding, or why you might want to focus on a certain neighborhood or group to target resources to. And I think what I really wanted to show by going through these different things is that they're all using the same data, but hearing from community and hearing from the organizations that we work with, it's really important to have also the same information presented in different ways, because it's difficult, for example, to like go through every single indicator and pull information about LGBTQ students, whereas being able to have it all here in one place makes it a lot easier to understand what sort of action you might want to take. The other thing I did want to highlight about this project is, which is different from what I've been doing lately, is that our audience is community organizations, like I've said, but also the public. And we're not really trying to gear this stuff to data analysts or people that are really, really comfortable with Tableau. And so something that was a big learning curve for me was really trying to make all of our dashboards quite simple, which is hard sometimes when you have a lot of really cool data because you just want to like do a million things. But keeping it simple. And then the other thing that we did is we created a lot of these how-to videos. So we do how to use an indicator, and then how to use the neighborhood dashboard, because even though, as you know, Tableau people, all of this stuff probably feels very intuitive, it's not for everybody. So this was like these videos were a really important tool that needed to be made in order to make all of this accessible. So that's really the project that I wanted to highlight. What's kind of sad is that the new website with all the interactive indicators launched right before COVID. It launched on March 7th. So part of my job before I moved on was really to do knowledge mobilization and go out to all these organizations and help them understand how they might use this to do their work. But I wasn't able to do that because of COVID, and then I got redeployed. So it's a very exciting project that has a lot of places to go still. So before I end, I just really wanted to show quickly some of the stuff that I've been working on lately. So I'm going to show you just our City of Toronto status of COVID cases page. This is really where a lot of the work I've been doing lives now. And I am lucky to now work with a team of people that do data viz. So we have 2 other people that work on the dashboards, one other person that is a main dashboard creator like me, and then all the epidemiologists who support behind the scenes with the data manipulation and analysis and stuff. And we've been able to really create a number of dashboards that go public, but even more dashboards that are internal, which I unfortunately won't be able to share, but I did just want to highlight a couple that are cool. So this one is pretty basic. It's just reporting daily numbers updated every day. But this next one is called the Epidemiological Summary of Cases. And this is where we have a lot more of interactivity, so users can select different graphs to view. We have testing data, we have all kinds of stuff, and you're able to kind of look at the entire time period, or you can also focus in on just a certain, since wave 2, so since August 1st. If you scroll down, we then have information about severity, so hospitalizations, trends over time, and so on. The next is about where people are getting COVID. So this is source of infection information, same kind of thing. So it really, we're using Tableau to really tell the story of the pandemic. The story of the pandemic, whereas that first tab I showed you is just really our daily reporting. We have neighborhood maps. The monitoring dashboard is one of the main things that I work on. This is what we report out to the public is really just supposed to be a report card of a number of different indicators that we look at very closely internally. So we have a lot of moving averages of case rate, of hospitalizations, some modeling information, turnaround times for our labs, our percent positivity, which is really insane. It only recently went down to 8.6%, but it was at 10% for quite a while. Our hospital capacity and more. But what's fun is that this is what I made for the public, but then behind the scenes, we have many, many dashboards that really further drill down and provide our internal decision makers with really, detailed information that feeds into all these numbers. So there's a lot of data visualization happening at Public Health, and it's all very exciting. This one is looking at our ethno-racial information. We use the storytelling feature to allow people to kind of drill through and look at COVID information that we have by race, income, and so on. So I think I'm going to stop there. I would love in the future to be able to share more about what's happening at Public Health. I think in the last 10 months that I've been working there, I've learned so much with Tableau and creating like lots of really, really cool dashboards that are right now internal, but that I would love to share at some future meeting. So I'll stop there and then maybe open it up for questions. So thank you.
Wow, those are awesome dashboards, Tamara. Like the Raising the Village is certainly very inspirational. Like you certainly know the data really well, and it seems like it's an awesome project that would bring a lot of value to some community groups. And I'm glad to see that the R naught is below 1 now.
Yes, just recently.
It's pretty good. It's pretty exciting. We do have a question. Do you use Python with Tableau? And if yes, any example?
So I unfortunately am still a very beginner Python user. I do know a little bit of Python, and my goal is to try and force myself to use Python instead of Tableau Prep, because to be honest, like most of what I do now for manipulating and analyzing data, I do through Prep just because it's so easy. But I think once I'm not in fire putting out mode of COVID response, I'm hoping to go back and just really force myself to learn Python. But in terms of the COVID stuff, all our epidemiologists use SAS and SPSS. So most of that like modeling and whatnot gets done through SAS. So that's kind of the software that we use, which I know is a little bit kind of outdated compared to Python, but that's what they know. So that's what gets used.
Awesome. So just a reminder to people that they can post questions in the Q&A, and we can pose them to the presenters.
Oh, I just saw in the chat that somebody used Raising the Village in their literature research, which is amazing. That makes me so happy to hear.
And there's a comment that was great. Somebody's very excited. Exclamation point.
Awesome.
Awesome. It certainly looks like there's some very interesting calculations too in Raising the Village, where you're like comparing like the highest versus the lowest. Like I bet there would be. Oh, somebody has another question. Can you share the data infrastructure used for the dashboard? Are you connecting with a database or a flat file?
Which dashboard?
Belle, did you want to comment on which dashboard you're Raising the Village?
So unfortunately, the Raising the Village data is like I can't really share it. So it's the school boards, and they're very protective of their data because it's about their students. But it is most of the dashboards that I showed you were with that TDSB census data. And it's really, if you can just imagine like a really big survey, that's what the data looks like. And how it gets sent to me is in an Excel file with student ID, and then it's a massively wide file. So it has every single column, probably like 50 columns that are related to information about the student's demographics. And then the next 100 or whatever are answers to the census questions. So what I did is I actually did a double pivot in Tableau Prep, which you can also do in in Python. But I initially pivoted all the demographic questions because I wanted people to be able to slice and dice by demographics, and then I did an additional pivot of all of the census questions. So my file actually ended up being extremely long, but incredibly not wide. So I really just had 5 columns. It was like student ID, demographic variable, demographic value, question and answer were essentially and then I did all my analysis on that super long file.
And that was an Excel file.
Excel, yeah. Like I ran it through Prep, or it was a CSV. I ran it through Prep and then popped it out as a CSV.
Right. Yeah. So is that's like that was just a like one survey in time, or did they repeat that survey?
Yeah. So that gets done once every 5 years. So that's
wow.
Yeah. It's a crazy endeavor actually for the TDSB. Like it costs a lot of money for them to roll out the survey because they get like a 95% response rate, and the TDSB has it's a massive school system, but yeah, every data source is a little bit different. Like the StatsCan census gets sent to me in this like weird bizarre file format where you have to download a specific StatsCan like software called Beyond 2020 to be able to even look at it. So everything is a little bit different. So I got very good at like using weird file formats and stuff. But in at Public Health, we're using, so like right now we actually have a partnership with Blue Dot, and we're experimenting with APIs with them. So there's a lot more kind of connecting directly to databases at Public Health.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like quite an endeavor to get all that survey information, but really valuable, like to, get all that information so they can make some, steps forward on that. So somebody says, great presentation. Do you do any predictions analysis?
Yeah, so we do a lot of predictive analysis for Public Health. Like that R naught number that's on the monitoring dashboard is actually like pulled out of a massive predictive model that just takes a whole bunch of information about COVID and predicts into the future what our R naught number is going to be. Internally, we do a lot of other modeling and predictive analysis all related to COVID. So right now we're doing a lot of modeling in partnership with U of T about the vaccine. So we have a lot of questions about, for example, the waning time of the vaccine, like if it wanes in 6 months, like what will, I won't talk about it because it's a bit depressing, some of the stuff, but we're, trying to predict like what's going to happen once people are vaccinated based on all these different things that could happen with the vaccine. But we don't do a lot of that or any really of that modeling within Tableau. We just use Tableau as the end visualization product for that modeling. That gets run through a lot of kind of like through SAS and other software like that. But then where we use Tableau is even the model output will have like, 1,000 different iterations, and we want our medical officer of health, Eileen Davila, for example, to be able to ask her own questions of those models. So, or if council is asking questions or the public, we can be able to slice and dice and try and answer their question faster than if we didn't have that stuff pulled into Tableau. So that's one of the kind of internal things that we're working on.
Okay, do you ever experience any data quality issues, and do you do data cleanup normalization prior to connecting the data set to Tableau?
Oh yeah, like everything that we work with, there's data quality issues. There's like lots with COVID data. We don't really report out on anything where we know there's really big data quality issues, but they still exist. We're doing constant QA every single day. So like any day we could get a new case that, for example, might have a case created date before their specimen was collected, so before they got tested, which doesn't make sense. Like we can't create a case about a positive COVID case if we haven't collected their COVID test. So there's like simple QA stuff like that. I mean, all of this ends up being, way down the line in terms of people inputting data. That's actually probably a bad example because it's definitely been corrected, I think, at this point in terms of having like a warning flag when you do input that data. But yeah, there's always data quality issues that we have to work on. That's, I think, the bulk of our job in terms of public health, the epidemiologists, is the data quality piece.
How did you improve your Tableau expertise? Training or anything else?
Yeah, I actually haven't done any training. So I really was like, this is why I know if I could just throw myself into Python, I'll eventually learn. But I think my experience was just being thrown into it. So like and I talked about that first dashboard I built to make a business case. I was given one day that I was allowed to work from home, which now seems funny because we're all working from home. But at the city, it wasn't a normal thing. So I was allowed to kind of go home and spend one day, download. Oh yeah, because the other thing about the city is we had to get kind of permission to download software. So I wasn't able to download my free Tableau public desktop at the time. So I did it on my personal computer and then had to just like figure it out in a day. So that was like stressful, but I, managed to put something together. But I'm learning every single day. I use the forums a lot. Like even today and yesterday, I've been trying to figure out this like annoying thing that I'm trying to create like a case doubling calculation, but it's not the same as the regular case doubling stuff that people are doing, and I'm just totally stuck. And I have been using the forums a lot for that question, and then Googling. But I haven't done any specific like training videos. But one day maybe I will.
So I don't know if you're familiar with this question, but somebody's asking, do you know any type of ETL or automation with Tableau similar to how it's done with Power BI? But I'm not sure. Do you know Power BI to compare and contrast, or?
I would say that right now I'm almost using Prep as my like ETL tool. But this is something, that other people on this call probably know a lot more than me, because I'm not really a database person. To be honest, my background is actually in policy and I just kind of fell into data viz. So this is definitely out of my wheelhouse.
Well, you've certainly done a great job with data viz. So I think we'll maybe wrap it up there. So if if they have additional questions for Tamara, you're going to stay on the call, Tamara?
Yep, I'll be here. I might turn off the video just so I don't have to look at
Yeah. So you guys can maybe flip over to the chat, and she can, if you have any additional questions for her, she could chat back and forth with you if you have any additional comments or questions for Tamara. But thank you so much for sharing your dashboards with us tonight. They're amazing. So inspired by your Raising the Village, and of course we're all checking the COVID dashboard every day just to make sure things are starting to go down. Looks good, so hopefully it will continue in the right direction. So You
Thank
keep
you,
us on the straight and
everybody.
narrow.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for presenting for us tonight.
Okay. I'll be here, but
Awesome. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen again so I can introduce Caroline. So, oops, excuse me. Okay, so next we have Caroline Swiger. She is going to walk us through her inspirational process, her creative process on building a Tableau CV. So this is a project I was familiar with. She presented for TD at one of their events, and she's done a great job on this Tableau CV. So it's a very beautiful visualization, very creative, and she's put a lot of thought into it, and she's going to walk you through how she does that. So I'll pass it over to you, Carolyn. I guess if you want to give yourself maybe a quick intro.
Sure thing. Okay.
Sorry, I'll stop sharing so you can have it.
Let's see.
We can see your screen.
All right. Trying to make it large in the presentation mode, but it's got the control buttons. Let's see. Do you know how to, there we go. That'll work. All right. So thank you, Candy, for that really nice introduction. I'm Caroline. I work in credit risk analytics at TD Bank, and it's such an honor to be with you all tonight. My goal is to inspire you to make your own Tableau CV or resume and to share some tips and tricks for your dashboards. We'll talk about the process first, and then I'll dive into some tips and tricks with the features that I use to build my CV dashboard, including adding a custom color palette, using a background image, featuring a map in a tooltip, and adding interactivity with dashboard actions. Interactive resumes are a great way to show employers in the visual analytics space your skills, creativity, and personality. I had seen a few on Twitter, but didn't get the nudge that I needed to actually do one myself until last summer when I started TD's internal Tableau Skill Belt program and needed an About Me dashboard. You got to start somewhere, and Tableau Public is a great resource. There's even an interactive resume gallery, and they actually just updated it within the last couple of weeks. So there's some new ones on there. Unlike print CVs or resumes, you'll see a little bit of everything in terms of layout and what's included. There are pictures, infographics, and every flavor of chart type and color scheme. As I scroll through some of these now, and as you explore on your own later, think about what you like. What colors are you drawn to? Which ones do you want to open and look at further? I found myself opening dashboards with darker backgrounds and came across Varun's resume. And they've actually just added his to the inspiration because it's amazing. I loved Varun's timeline. It's crisp, clear, and informative. And his inspiration was Josh Tapley. And Josh Tapley also used a half circle timeline for his employment timeline. And so without further ado, here is my CV. Like Varun and Josh, I have a half circle timeline to highlight my education and employment. But unlike theirs, I made mine interactive with a filter action so that the text appears when a user clicks into a circle. So if you click in a circle, then you'll see, what you might see on your regular CV about that experience. So I've included my name and a picture, specific skills, and URL actions at the bottom with my contact info. Since I created this CV to fulfill the About Me skill belt requirement, I used maps to tell a story about the places that I've lived with some personal details and my outside of work hobby, which is running. There are 3 maps on the dashboard. So the first one is the lived map, and if when a user hovers, then they'll be able to see a little blurb about the area, and then you know where it is in context with the zoomed in map as well. And let's see. So just a really fun kind of story about what places that I've lived. So you can click on the run map, and in this one, I've got a story that talks about the different marathons that I've run, and it includes a little picture for each of them. Um, Definitely a little bit more personal, but it was to fulfill the about me, and it's just kind of fun. It's a less formal way to introduce yourself. Um, so talking about the process, after getting some inspiration, one of the first things you need to determine is your objective. Are you applying for a new job that may require certain Tableau skills, or are you just showcasing your work? Or, do you need an About Me dashboard? So you're going to want to include all of the usual suspects: your name, your contact info, some kind of timeline with your education and employment and skills. But exactly what you include and where you include it depends on your objective. How you structure your data depends on what visualization you choose. Tableau works best with column data, and I included metadata on the first row to describe the contents of each column, and then each row was a school or work experience. I actually used 2 sheets, real basic in Excel, one for the resume and then one for the maps. And this may be an iterative process. You may get into it and then realize, oh, well, I'd like to add this to my tooltips, or, something else. So the way you structure your data might be very iterative. And if you're interested, I have a link to the blog that I used to create the half circle timeline, Tableau Magic. He's got amazing tutorials. It was great. It very step by step includes, how your data should look and how you do the join and all the calculated fields that you'll need. And then he goes on to talk about how to put it together on the worksheet. So a very useful resource. I love all of his blogs and tutorials. So I'll have a link to that on my CV actually. So the next step is to design, iterate, and get feedback. Typically, you want to include your most important elements in the top left, since in many Western countries we read left to right, so that's where someone's eyes are going to go first. You want to be intentional with your color scheme and formatting. I encourage you to add mixed media, images, icons, text, tooltips. You want to think about how you want your end users to interact with your dashboard, and make sure to include a call to action so that they know how to use those features. Strongly encourage you to use URL actions like links to your LinkedIn, your email, if you have a personal blog or portfolio of your work. And my favorite tip is to ask a friend to share screens with you and watch them interact with your viz. Are they doing what you would like them to do, what you hope they would do? So that's definitely my my favorite tip, and it has been super helpful. Bless all of my friends that have shared screens and played with my dashboards. And now to some tips and tricks. The first thing that I did was to create a custom color palette. Neil Richards on Tableau Public has a really fun dashboard with 100 color schemes of very lovely color palettes. And I picked Grecian Holiday and used the syntax from the tooltip in my preferences.tps file to add it. The next thing that I wanted was a gradient background. I wanted something warm with some depth. And so I created a shape in PowerPoint and then saved it as a picture. And really quickly, I can show you in the PowerPoint, if you go to shapes and you can click on the rectangle, if you are wanting some kind of gradient background, you can go to the shape fill and then gradient. And you could pick one of these, or you can go to more gradients and it can let you, you can really customize, and they've got some preset gradients and that kind of thing. Then you can right click and save as a picture. Make sure you save it as a .png and put it in your Tableau repository folder to float it onto your dashboard. All right. Okay, so for the map in the tooltips, I have the main maps on separate sheets, and then I created a separate map for each tooltip, and I just used a different background. I used the street background rather than the light background, and then you can just stack them across in your tooltip and filter by country or city state so that it's the only one that appears when you're hovering over that location. So I had filter actions, like I mentioned, to get the text for the employment and education timeline. And you can you can do the filter action to exclude all values so that you don't see it when it's not selected. And with the URL actions, I have some shapes, and I just created a calculated field and was able to add the link with the URL. So super easy, but great ways to enhance the interactivity with your dashboard. So finally, I had a parameter action for the maps because I wanted to have them both, but only see one at a time. So I created a string parameter with the two possible values, and then I used a sheet swapper with a true false filter so that that map would only appear when it was selected. So I'll show you going back to the CV. I can show you some of the other things that I did. I'm going to get out of presentation mode. So with my timeline, I used a transparent shape overlay. So this was what the actual half circle timeline looked like. And when you click on it, it grays everything out, and it's a little strange. It's not terrible, but just personal preference. I didn't love how that looked. So with the I created a transparent sheet to hover over it. And so it's duplicated, and with my color, I just set the opacity to 0. So it's completely transparent. And then when you're doing that, don't forget to change your shading to none for your worksheet. And then I used the layout to make sure they were in the exact same place. And so now when you click, there's no awkward graying of the other half circles. So that's a fun way that you can if you don't have to, but it's just, personal preference if you don't want to have the shading. I also do that for a lot of my buttons. So I have, and I'm calling, when you use a transparent sheet, you have to remember to call your action and to have your tooltips from the transparent one rather than the one underneath. So if I take the transparent one off, you can see, like when I click on lived, that the run one gets a little strange and grayed out. And I just decided I didn't like that. So if you can hover a transparent sheet over it, then you get rid of the shading because the action is coming from the transparent sheet rather than the one beneath it. So that is what I have for you all. I would love to answer any questions. I know they go in the chat box, so feel free. Would love to hear your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. It's I love your resume. It's so creative, and I love
thank you.
walking us through your thinking process, and it really helps to start the thinking process on our own resumes. So it's really cool. Yeah, great. So just a reminder to everybody, if you have questions for Caroline, you can type the questions in the Q&A tab there, and we can read them out loud for Caroline. So I think Samara said, very neat. I missed the beginning. Is this the inspirational one on Tableau Public? So I think the inspiration you were talking about on Tableau Public for the interactive resumes, that's just, you just type in, basically you can just Google interactive Tableau resumes and that page comes up. Right?
Yeah. That's where you can find it.
Yeah, so it's easy to Google. Lots of interesting, they should put your resume on there. I guess they haven't found it yet. Maybe the next update. But there's lots of ideas there as well, like different ways. I did after we were talking the other day, I scanned it, and there's different ways to present your work history, different ways to present your skills, and it's just interesting to see how everybody has created things. Oh, we have a question. Is it possible to zoom in or out of the half circle timeline?
To zoom in, in what way? I guess I don't know.
I guess you're not going to zoom. Like, I guess they're asking for like a drill down on one particular thing. Well, if you click the half circle, then it gives it more information at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't zoom, no.
Yeah, it's static for the most part. I mean, I that's just kind of the way I was thinking about it, though. I'm sure you could use it differently. A lot of flexibility there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do find it on Tableau Public and you go to the icon, I have some other links, and then you can click on it and it'll take you to the half circle timeline blog that Tableau Magic has.
Oh, that's under the eye. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this person clarified, if there are many half circles, is it possible to bring them closer to each other or distance them to avoid overlaps? So I don't know if you know that from when you were creating it, like, is it like how you created it? Is there a way to to make them distinct, or do they want to Because I know some of them overlap here.
Yeah, so I do
It's
have
because
some
of the timeline?
overlap.
Yeah.
I guess since some of the years crossed over, I'm sure you could do something with the axis if you got really creative.
Right. So because the timeline here, like your circles are on like basically on a continuous like month axis or
Right. Yeah.
right. Yeah. So you'd have to maybe stretch that out today or something perhaps to avoid some of to stretch it out a little bit maybe. Yeah, excellent. So I think that's all the questions we have for now, but we'll move on. There's a poll. We're going to do a little bit of polling, but if you don't mind, Caroline, we'll switch everybody over to the chat. And if anybody has any additional questions for Caroline, they can move over to the chat if they want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your Tableau CV and your inspirational process. It's certainly very interesting to see how everybody imagines things. So it provides inspiration to us all. And it's certainly a very attractive resume. It's certainly well designed and it's really interesting. Thank you so much for presenting tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So Ojo, you put a link in the chat.
Yes.
So do you want me to do a slide or?
It's fine, Candy.
People can just pick it off of here? Everybody can just pick it off?
Yeah. So while the presentations were happening, I typed off a couple of questions for the DAFAM, the team who has joined our presentation. And first of all, thank you everyone for finding time of their busy schedule to present. Carolyn, fantastic work with your resume. I've seen it and then I emulated it. I've looked at Josh's work, Josh Tapley, created my own resume in the similar format and uploaded it as a banner to my LinkedIn profile. Very handy, very helpful, and very neat. Tamara, interesting as it is, when you were presenting first for the city 5 years back, I saw the first slide that you had, the one with the purple background that looks like a corplet. Beautiful, fantastic work, and all the very best for your new role. Vanita, thanks for being with us. Without much ado, I just want to open up and share my screen to what we achieved as a group, as a Toronto Tableau user group. We got relaunched as a bigger team in the, let me know when you can see the screen. Can everybody see the screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so we got launched, relaunched back in the January of 2020 last year. And since then we have had Zen Masters who have agreed to come and present their work, inspire the team here, build up the data fam. And then we saw some early adoption in our group for the virtual meeting during the COVID times. The fantastic numbers which the team shares at the end of the user group meetings, where we see a progressive increase in the number of returning members of the community, and that number is growing. So definitely there's this organic growth within our group and in the community. So we decided, Roland joined us, and then this year is going to be a fantastic year. Unfortunately, Vanita is leaving the group to join with Tableau as an employee. And however, we have Roland in the team who has a well-rounded experience and leadership, and is taking care of the social media side of it. And this time I thought I'll have some fun with the poll. So the poll lines are open. It's in the chat. I sent the URL. And what I will do is, let me show you the logo that I was thinking we could have for our Toronto Tug. I know we have one with the Tableau, the O's are the Tableau logos in the Toronto. However, I thought that this might also be an alternative, and then we could poll on which logo looks better. So on the left is the Toronto Tableau user group logo, and on the right is the same logo, but instead of calling out the Tableau user group as is, I'm calling it out as Tug. So with that picture in mind, let me switch over to our next poll question. So if you did redirect to the poll, you will get a chance to vote on which of the logos you like more. And then we do have other questions, two other questions. In today's session, whose presentation you like most? The idea is not to pitch anyone against another, but just to get an idea of what kind of content appeals to the audience most. And then the second question obviously is around how many Tug sessions you got a chance to attend last year. I personally attended a few, but let the audience vote so that we know and get some feedback. So if you're still looking for the URL for the poll, it's there in the comments. So thank you. Handing it over to you, Candy, and I'll release the poll results as I have them. Thank you. Over to you, Candy.
Awesome. Thanks, Ojo. So I guess without further ado, it won't keep you guys all evening. I just wanted to wrap it up and tell everybody that our next meeting will be on the 24th of March. I don't think it's at 6. I think it's a little bit earlier, but there will be an invitation coming out. So we're going to try having it a little earlier in the evening because we're all working at home now anyway. So so the time is a little, it's not 6. I think it's at 5 instead. But and you can let us know if that works for you or if it doesn't work for you. Again, it will be virtual. And we're going to have some information on accessibility because that's a big topic. I'm sure that's probably on Tamara's dashboard somewhere about accessibility and how that factors into her metrics. And how we can make our dashboards more accessible. So that will be our topic for March. But hope that you guys will all join us then. And without further ado, I guess we'll wrap up for tonight and look forward to seeing you then. So thank you everybody for attending. And thank you so much to Tamara and to Caroline for their awesome presentations tonight. We're definitely super happy to see all your inspiration and how you came about using Tableau and how it's evolved for you. It's great. Thank you so much.